Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, as evidenced by my legislation that I focused on for the last several years, my top priority has been protecting some of our most vulnerable populations, especially women and children. This is exactly why we're here today, to once again lend a voice to those who are incredibly vulnerable in need of protection. Today I'm here on behalf of incarcerated women in California prisons who are dealing with the unintended consequences of allowing transgender inmates to be housed in women's correctional facilities. Numerous female inmates have reached out to us on many times, begging for help and asking for a solution to this extremely dire situation that they've been forced into. Last August, I received a letter from an inmate who was begging for help for her and her friends, where her friend in the Central Valley Women's Facility, she described it as this. She said that a transgender inmate had raped her, physically assaulted her friend inside the prison. She included a condom in that letter, which highlighted the fact that the prison staff had to hand them out to protect inmates from STDs and pregnancies. Think about that for just a second. Why is the state of California paying for condoms in women's prisons? You may recall I held the condom up on the Senate floor and warned that we needed to come up with a better solution to protect these women from rape, abuse at the hands of predators inside the correctional facilities. SB 132, which was passed in 2020 to offer additional protections for transgender, non-binary, and intersex inmates in state prisons, allow these inmates to request housing based on gender identity. SB 132 also gave preferential housing to these inmates above women in the facility. This bill is offering equity for women. SB 132 has resulted in incredibly harmful and dangerous unintended consequences for female inmates in our two only women's prisons. I've had many discussions with the members of the LGBTQ community, members of this committee, current inmates, formerly incarcerated inmates, and advocacy groups on what's been happening in our women's prisons since the implementation of SB 132. Everyone agrees that we need to keep inmates safe and provide additional protections. SB 132 is well intended, but definitely needs guardrails. Currently under SB 132, you just have to check a box. Male inmates who I self-identify as transgender are transferring to the women's facilities and assaulting, abusing, raping, impregnating, infecting our female prison population with sexually transmitted diseases. This is not okay, and it needs to stop. These discussions led me to introduce SB 311, which is before you here today. SB 311 establishes a secure housing facility for transgender women at each women's prison. It ensures safety and privacy of women in sleeping and other intimate spaces. It prohibits sex offenders from being housed in women's prisons. It creates a dedicated facility within the prisons to address the needs of transgender women while maintaining fairness and dignity in the correctional housing policies. It promotes safer and a more secure environment for all incarcerated individuals. Existing law requires the California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation, CDCR, to institute certain practices to prevent sexual violence and promote inmate and ward safety within these prisons. Currently, there are specialized programming units in CDCR that are designated to provide focused rehabilitative services for specific populations within the correctional system, including those with substance abuse disorders, mental health needs, or the needs of other specialized reentry programs to make them more successful on the outside. These units aim to address individual needs and improve outcomes for incarcerated individuals and those on parole. SB 311 is to prioritize the safety and privacy of all women. This dedicated housing solution for transgender women mirrors the structure of some CDCR specialized programming units. Transgender women can participate in yard and recreation time, job, education training, programming, and other general population activities alongside biological women. This is consistent with CDCR's policy on rehabilitation and goals for safety consideration. our bill just addresses intimate spaces. The unfortunate reality is that SB 132 has allowed violent male predators to transfer into female prisons. In an effort to protect vulnerable transgender inmates, we have jeopardized the safety as women as well. Sadly, 132 has prioritized the safety of transgender inmates at the expense of female inmates. These female inmates are now being raped, assaulted, and infected with STDs, impregnated by violent sexual predators who self-identify as transgender but are fully intact males. A 2022 CDCR report found that 33.8% of male inmates requesting transfer to female facilities were registered sex offenders. Of these individuals who were required to register as 290 registrants. An example of a 290 registrant is an individual who is committed or convicted of rape, human trafficking for sexual purposes, sexual battery, continuous sexual abuse of a child, meaning ongoing sexual abuse of a child under 14 years old for a long period of time, lewd acts of a child, child molestation, possession or distribution of child pornography, pimping and pandering involving minors, forced oral copulation, sodomy by force or with a child, sexual penetration of a foreign object, incest, and statutory rape. Colleagues, at a very minimum, I think that we can all agree that individuals who have been convicted and sentenced to prison as a man in a men's prison under these circumstances that I just read as 290 registrants should not be able to transfer to women's prisons. There's a growing concern about the safety and privacy in shared spaces. In a 2023 PREA report, the Prison Rape Elimination Act, there were 5 confirmed cases of non-consensual sex acts. There were 124 unsubstantiated cases, meaning not unfound, just did not meet the level of evidence the department's standards. Even SB 132, in the author's own language, states, quote, most instances of prison rape often go unreported. We know that female inmates are being sexually assaulted by male inmates on a regular basis, but sadly these cases go unreported out of fear and retaliation. Women have been reaching out from both prisons, and their concerns regarding abuses are happening inside these prisons. Quote, in January 2023, I was sexually assaulted by a transgender woman that was physically intact, so didn't have SRS, sexual reassignment surgery. It was terrifying and disgusting because I knew there was nothing I could do about it. Close quote from an inmate in the Chowchilla facility. Colleagues, I have received, after holding up that condom on the floor, all of these letters, handwritten, from incarcerated women in both facilities. Women who are serving time for a crime that most likely was a man that put them there. I'm not going to read every one of these letters to you. I'd like to provide them to you, but I am going to share some information from these women. A few excerpts from these women in prison. I am a juvenile adult to adult offender that has been incarcerated for over 20 years. In that time, I've seen much, and yet nothing egregious as what I've seen in the result of poor implementation of SB 132. In December of 2022, the horrific details of my ordeal became known. An SB 132 transferred, now accused of raping 2 women and impregnating one that got sent to Los Angeles, physically abused me for months. I was kicked, punched, choked, pushed, bitten in the face, and on the fearful day in late December of 2022, I was struck twice in the face with an electrical device, parentheses, a tablet. Sometime in that hell, I suffered a spontaneous abortion. As a result of my sexual and physical abuse in custody, I suffer now from PTSD. She ends her letter by saying, here is where you come in. You possess the power to put an end to my horrific, inhumane, and disgusting ordeal, along with other inmates in the Central Valley Correctional Facility, respectfully, in the individual's name. There's another CCWF letter. She describes the conditions inside the Central Valley Women's Facility. These two events were in addition to rape, pregnancies, being physically assaulted, threatened with violence, exerting their dominance by physical intimidation and having sex with women in the secret place, specifically the bathroom at the plant operations department. This goes unchecked. There aren't enough staff to patrol them, and generally every day it's like the wild, wild west. I've lived with a 6.5 foot, 200-pound man, parentheses, yes, intact, close parentheses, in this very room. It was more than uncomfortable. I had no choice. He had housing over me. I cannot fathom 211 more men here. It makes me extremely fearful and depressed. And the last one that I'm going to read to you, a part of it, and again, they're not their whole letters. I received a letter dated from an incarcerated woman in CCWF on April 14th, 2025. She describes the majority of these women have already been sexually assaulted and states this in her letter. At a minimum, 85% of the female population have suffered sexual abuse in some way in their lives to end up where they are today. Yet the majority of male transgender housed in the women's facilities have sexually violent cases against them on the outside and domestic violence. Why are they here in our prisons? Colleagues, no one deserves to be abused at the hands of another. Yesterday, most of us stood on the floor, including individuals on this dais, about Denim Day. They called rape being rape. They said rape is unacceptable in any circumstances. Yesterday, that resolution overwhelmingly passed, representing Denim Day and the issue of protecting women from being raped. I fear that today SB 311 will fail. I don't understand why rape is not rape, based on the same comments that our colleagues made on the floor yesterday. I introduced SB 311 to provide protections for everyone, including transgender inmates and female inmates. My goal is to provide protections for both vulnerable communities, both of the vulnerable communities, and have some guardrails on SB 132, not just having an elevated preference for transgender women above women. One of the reasons we don't have better data on the prevalence of this issue is because many of inmates are incredibly fearful of being retaliated against. Prison are notoriously violent places. We're placing male sexual predators in rooms with vulnerable females, and we expect them to willingly come forward and risk their health and safety and lives. This is why they're writing anonymous letters from prison and asking to remain anonymous, and it's heartbreaking. We have to do what we can to stand up for them. I know we all desire to ensure that the vulnerable communities are protected, all vulnerable communities. I know that no one on this committee wants to see the vulnerable population or any population be at risk for abuse, assault, or victimization. I proposed to the committee chair last week to amend the bill to include a provision that makes inmates of sexual offenders ineligible for transfer, meaning 290 registrants only. My hope is that at a minimum we could agree that violent sex offenders that have been prosecuted and convicted for savagely sexually abusing people on the outside, they would be ineligible to continue their abuses on the inside. Sadly, I was informed by committee staff that that amendment to this bill would not be accepted. I hope I'm wrong. After hearing from the witnesses that we have here today, I hope that you're opening to discussion a solution that will work for everyone. My first witness is Amie Ichikawa, who is a passionate advocate for incarcerated women and the founder of Woman to Woman, a nonprofit dedicated to supporting safety, dignity, and reentry for women in California's prison system. Having served 5 years herself in the Central California Women's Facility in Chowchilla, Amie brings firsthand insight into the challenges faced by incarcerated women. My second witness is Tisha Crosland, who's also a founding member of Woman to Woman and a formerly incarcerated individual and a lived experienced expert in this field.
Great, thank you. You may proceed with your testimony. You have 2 minutes. Thank you, Chairman, Vice Chair, honorable committee members. My name is Amie Ichikawa. I'm the Executive Director of Women to Women and Ambassador for the Independent Women's Forum, and I'm a rape survivor who was incarcerated at CCWF when a violent registered sex offender was transferred there from a men's prison. Under existing law, transfers from men's to women's prisons are housed with the general population in our state's only two women's prisons. These folks include violent sex offenders coming from men's level 4 facilities that have secured perimeters with internal and external armed coverage. By contrast, CCWF has one gunner in one tower. CIW doesn't even have an electric fence, which is a requirement for housing prisoners with life sentences. The transfers are coming from two-man cells in a highly secured setting to the lower security environments in women's prisons where people are housed in dormitories with 8 people per room. Transfers who have gamed the system using false trans identities have assaulted, threatened, and intimidated female prisoners, many of whom are survivors of severe sexual and physical abuse. This situation impairs their ability to heal from their own traumas and to process the pain that they've caused others. One cannot rehabilitate while in a state of hypervigilance or actively in their criminal thinking and behaviors. SB 311 prohibits transfer requests from those convicted of PC 290 sex offenses to women's prisons. It recognizes the department's duty to protect the safety of all incarcerated individuals by ensuring that those with a documented history of sexually abusing vulnerable people are not placed in situations where they will reoffend. Housing violent and predatory men who have gamed the system with vulnerable women shouldn't be a political issue. It's a public safety and human rights issue. We can't solely defend these women from the assaults that lead to funding and contracts. Complicity in their continued abuse can't be a form of income. We must make a commitment to protect them from all forms of sexual abuse. You have the power to extend human rights to the entire incarcerated female population. I'm asking that you please vote yes on SB 311 to show California and the rest of the nation, which follows our lead, that protecting women's safety is not up for a debate. I ask that you would please vote yes and vote for people over politics. And Michelle Norsworthy says hello to everyone in the room and sends her warmest regards to the committee. Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. My name is Tisha Crosland. I'm a founding member of Woman to Woman and Director of Reentry Services. I was incarcerated for almost 20 years across juvenile, federal, and state systems, and I maintain strong ties to women that are still inside. Today I'm asking you to vote yes on SB 311 because I've lived the reality this bill seeks to fix. In 2012, near the end of my sentence, I learned that a person convicted of rape and sodomy, someone who electrocuted a mother and daughter during their assault in Fresno, was approved to transfer into women's prison from a men's prison. The women inside, many of whom, like me, survived sexual violence, were devastated. We knew the case, we knew the details, and we were forced to accept that this individual, this predator, could move into our housing units, our jobs, even our rooms. The same person then approached our Inmate Advisory Council chairwoman to request a job as an electrician. The trauma of that moment, the horror, the helplessness cannot be overstated. It was an assault on all of us. Our last safe place had been forcibly penetrated without our consent, and there was nothing we could do. Without the safeguards that SB 311 puts in place, these kinds of forced situations will continue and it will get worse. Women's lives are at stake, and just because they are incarcerated doesn't mean their lives don't matter. This bill is a starting point for real safety and dignity for incarcerated women. It's a basic protection that says survivors matter, even behind bars. I urge you to vote yes on SB 311. This is an opportunity to positively impact the lives of some of the most forgotten women in California. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll take any Me Too testimony in support of SB 311. If you can please line up and approach the microphone and state your name, organization or affiliation, and position on the bill.
Denise Aguilar, co-founder of Freedom Angels, in support of this bill, also speaking for my aunt who is incarcerated in Chowchilla Women's Facility and currently incarcerated with a male predator who's gamed the system, is also in support of the bill.
Tara Thornton, co-founder of Freedom Angels, and I could sit here for hours scrolling. I'm on behalf of the incarcerated women, I'm in support of any guardrails that will help stop predators from gaming SB 132. There's 1,000 pending transfers.
Elizabeth Kenny from Women Are Real and Cause, please say aye to Shannon Grove's bill. We're in strong support. These men are in disguise of transgender
Thank you.
to get away from this.
David Bolog, representing the Serving Family Values, Moms for Liberty, LA County Chapter, Truth Exchange, the Facts Law, Truth Justice law firm. We are in support.
Stephen Barassa, the Log Cabin Republicans of Sacramento, in support.
Beverly Talbot from San Francisco, from Women Are Real and Californians United for Sex-Based Evidence in Policy and Law, cause, in very strong support. Thank you.
My name is Cynthia Cravens, and I'm a longtime Democrat and also a lifelong liberal. I'm also a former candidate for State Senate District 11, and I am associated with Women Are Real and associated with Cause. I am strongly in support of this bill.
I'm Amber Condola. I'm a Sacramento resident and affiliated with the Freedom Angels. I am in strong support of this bill.
Yvette Corcoran from San Francisco, also former State Senate candidate, District 11, and strong support of 311.
Hi, Liz Stroder from Woman to Woman. I am formerly incarcerated. I'm a former LWOP. I spent 25 years in California's women's prisons, and I strongly support SB 311.
My name's Rolando Garza, ex-lifer, served 40 years, and I'm in support of 311.
Good afternoon. I'm Jean Chadbourne, lifelong Democrat, a member of Women Are Real and Cause. Also, I've been volunteering inside California state prisons with incarcerated folks for over 5 years, and I'm in support of this bill with the amendment that Senator Shannon Grove suggested.
My name is Amanda Kovitana. I'm a registered Democrat, longtime lesbian activist from San Mateo. I'm here on behalf of Women Are Real and Cause, and I strongly support this bill.
Hello, my name is Ralph Diaz, 30-year experience, Department of Corrections, retired Secretary of the Department of Corrections, and I'm in strong support of this bill.
Hello, my name is Amie Anderson, and I'm a member of Cause and Women Are Real. And on behalf of myself and 3 other members of Cause, Reese Morris, Alexander Aaron, and Heather Mullen, I wholeheartedly support this bill.
Meg Madden, on behalf of Cause, Californians United for Sex-Based Evidence in Policy and Law, on behalf of Women Are Real, and on behalf of Nicole Young, Genevieve Polisi, Amy Rush, and Audra Sterrett, in strong support.
My name's Elizabeth Cronin, lifelong Democrat, member of California Teachers Association for 35 years. On behalf of Women Are Real, Cause, yes, on SB 311.
Sharon Byrne, Women's Liberation Front, the Feminists. We are in strong support of Section C of Senate Bill 311 to remove sex offenders, not supportive of A and B, unfortunately.
Joni Zander, a registered Democrat, a lesbian. I drove over from Bishop to be in support of this bill, and I'm also with Women's Liberation Front.
Barbara Walker, lifelong liberal Democrat from the Bay Area, mom of 3, here with Women Are Real and Californians United for Sex-Based Evidence in Policy and Law, also the Coalition of Sane People, in support of SB 311. Thank you.
I'm Sherry Meek, here on behalf of Women Are Real and Cause, Californians United for Sex-Based Evidence in Policy and Law, in strong support of this bill. Protect human rights, even in prison.
My name is Beth Bourne. I'm also representing the Coalition of Sane People. I'm also representing mothers who would never erase their perfectly beautiful daughters or sons because no one is born in the wrong body, and trans women are men. Thank you, and I support SB 311.
Molly Sheehan with the California Catholic Conference. We're in support for the reasons outlined in our letter. Thank you.
Sophia Laurie with California Family Council in strong support of 311.
Good afternoon, Erin Friday, lifelong Democrat, survivor, representing Gays Against Groomers, LGB Alliance, and Our Duty, and we're in strong support as amended.
Hello, I'm Brock Campbell. On behalf of Freedom's Way Baptist Church in Castaic, we're in strong support.
Hello, Emily Campbell on behalf of Lighthouse Baptist Church in Santa Maria in strong support.
Pastor Brandon Campbell, California Baptist for Biblical Values, and pastor of the Faith Baptist Church in Wheatland in strong support.
Kristen Campbell, just concerned citizen in strong support.
Okay, thank you very much. Unless there are any additional members of the public wishing to express support for SB 311, we'll now take two principal witnesses in opposition. Hi. And you'll each have 2 minutes to address the committee.
Good afternoon. I read this statement on behalf of myself, Colby Lenz, and Amika Mota, the Executive Director of Sister Warriors. We represent the California Coalition for Women Prisoners and Sister Warriors, with thousands of members currently and formerly incarcerated in the women's prisons. We support and believe survivors, all survivors, regardless of their identity or the circumstances of the violence. We believe all survivors in prison should have been protected from abuse. CDCR fails to protect people from sexual violence every day, especially by their own staff. This bill is not about preventing sexual assault in the women's prisons. It does not reflect a commitment to people in the women's prisons. This bill is not informed by visits to these prisons, and it does not take seriously the work of the Sexual Abuse Response and Prevention Working Group, including recommendations from over 700 incarcerated people. These are fringe groups and hate groups. This bill is about scapegoating transgender people. It's about using a very real crisis of systemic sexual violence in prisons to advance a national agenda to eliminate transgender people. And it does this on the backs of trans women who face the highest rates of sexual violence in California prisons. We support all survivors. We do not pick and choose. And what are the costs of the scapegoating? It sucks resources away from tackling the crisis. What does this bill do to prevent another gynecologist from sexually assaulting hundreds of women and trans men? What does this bill do to stop Gregory Rodriguez's buddies from retaliating against women he abused? Excuse me. He was convicted of sexually assaulting more than 20 women at CCWF. Has your office checked in on them? What does this bill do to stop CDCR staff, your state employees, from sexually harassing and assaulting women? How about the officers at work today who are notorious abusers? We have that list ready. This is the hard and devastating work that our organizations do with people in the women's prisons every day. We work with these survivors, hundreds and hundreds of them. We visit them, connect them with resources, amplify their solutions. Having a scapegoat means you don't have to do the extremely challenging work of changing these systems, of working to prevent sexual violence for all people. This bill is about politics, not survivors. We strongly oppose this bill.
Thank you. Next speaker. Good afternoon. My name is A.D. Lewis, and I'm an attorney with the Prison Law Office, where I have the honor to speak with, learn from, and advocate alongside hundreds of people in California prisons. I'm here today in strong opposition to SB 311. SB 311 purports to address sexual violence and now allegedly equity, but make no mistake, this is not about protecting anyone, and it's certainly not about equity. SB 311 villainizes and scapegoats trans women, not males, trans women, while ignoring and exacerbating the real causes of CDCR's ongoing sexual violence epidemic, and we ask the committee to reject this bill for two main reasons. First, SB 311 mandates at least two distinct forms of unlawful sex discrimination. For instance, SB 311 requires prison officials to physically isolate and segregate trans women from other women. This is sex discrimination, plain and simple, and it will inevitably and severely limit trans women's access to programming, community events, and credit earning opportunities, effectively punishing them. Another example is that SB 311 requires prison officials to house trans women with certain conviction offenses in men's prisons. When prison officials prevent a trans woman from being housed in a women's prison, but allows and houses cis women and trans men with those same convictions in women's prisons, those officials engage in unlawful sex discrimination. The second reason we encourage you to reject this bill is that SB 311 fails to disrupt sexual violence at all in prison. Our community deserves solutions to protect all survivors. And researchers have found that trans women, not males, trans women in California prisons experience sexual violence at 14 times the rate of non-trans people, and that 60 to 70% of trans people who are currently inside have been sexually victimized during their current period of incarceration. Additionally, reliable evidence demonstrates that staff, not trans people or other incarcerated people, perpetuate the vast majority of sexual harm in prisons. In 2023 alone, nearly 70% of all CDCR PREA allegations involve staff harming incarcerated people. There are many solutions to reduce and prevent sexual harm in prisons. You have heard one meaningful solution today, SB 337, and thank you for passing that. But another solution is ensuring that CDCR actually implements SB 132 to prevent sexual violence against all women, all survivors, and all people, cis and trans alike, in California prisons. For these reasons, and in deep and enduring solidarity of trans women and trans people, we oppose this bill and ask you to vote no.
All right, thank you. At this time, we'll take Me-Too's in opposition. Come up to the mic, state your name, organization you represent, and your opposition to the bill.
Hi, my name's Jackie Corrigan. I'm former chapter president at PFLAG and a current member of PFLAG and a mom of a transgender kid. And I strongly am opposed to this legislation and protect our transgender girls.
Thank you. We're just going to take name, organization, affiliation, and your position for and against.
Okay. Emily Harris on behalf of Californians United for a Responsible Budget, Uncommon Law, Felony Murder Elimination Project, and Sister Warriors Freedom Coalition in opposition.
Mark O. George on behalf of the California Public Defenders Association in strong opposition. Thank you.
Kelly Savage Rodriguez and our trans community inside in opposition.
Mercy Gray, co-founder of the Survivor Policy Coalition, Human Trafficking Survivors, strong opposition of the Kapampangan people of the Philippine Islands and the Apache tribe descendant. Thank you.
Hi, Jen Orthwine on behalf of the SB 132 Coalition, which includes Lambda Legal, Transgender Law Center, Trans Latino Coalition, and a number of other organizations that are here today, as well as Orthwine Law PC, all in opposition of this bill. Thank you.
Eve Banis with the Sacramento LGBT Community Center in strong opposition.
Tornay Lisheva, Flying Over Walls Prisoner Solidarity Project, strong opposition. Thank you.
Jesse Leonard Kinglake from Just Attention International, which fights prisoner rape, strong opposition.
Sarah Lee, Immigrant Legal Resource Center, strong opposition.
Angela Chan, San Francisco Public Defender's Office, strong opposition.
Oakley Phoenix with the TGIJP Black Transcultural Center and the child of two very sane, very non-turfy lesbian women in extremely strong opposition.
Good afternoon. Grace Glazer on behalf of Valor US, the State Sexual Assault Coalition in strong opposition.
Emma Rackham, Los Angeles resident in strong opposition. Elizabeth Nomura, CCWP in strong opposition.
Emily Wonder on behalf of Sister Warriors Freedom Coalition in strong opposition.
Hafsa Alamin with California Coalition for Women Prisoners in strong opposition.
Anastasia Franco, formerly imprisoned and survivor, and Trag Coalition, strong opposition.
Ryan Hall with Cal Pride in strong opposition.
Jaime Dorantes, Cal Pride, Valle Central and Merced, a strong opposition.
Tina Marie Silva, CCWP and Survived and Punished, strong opposition.
Diana Sands with the California Coalition for Women Prisoners, Raging Lesbian, raging opposition.
Samelia Rogers on behalf of Ella Baker Center for Human Rights, strong opposition.
Bethlehem Desta on behalf of the Transgender Advocacy Group and the Ella Baker Center in strong opposition.
Carrie Guerin in strong opposition.
Symphony Barbie on behalf of Planned Parenthood Affiliates of California in strong opposition. Thank you.
Natasha Minsker, Smart Justice California, strongly opposed.
Joss Green, sociology professor at UC Davis. Based on all existing evidence on gender violence in prison, I am in strong opposition.
Craig Pulsfer on behalf of Equality California and equal rights advocates in strong opposition.
Jonathan Clay, I'm on Trans Family Support Services and Alliance for Trans Youth Rights in opposition.
Joshua Stickney on behalf of the Ella Baker Center for Human Rights and SB 132 Implementation Coalition in strong opposition.
Samuel Jan on behalf of Disability Rights California in opposition.
Jared Thaler on behalf of friends, family, and several trans people in my close community, strongly in opposition.
Jessica Gachet on behalf of PFLAG San Jose Peninsula, PFLAG Oakland East Bay, PFLAG Tri-Valley, and Rainbow Families Action in strong opposition. Thank you.
Liz Bloom-Gutierrez on behalf of La Defensa, Vera California, Initiate Justice, and the LA County Public Defenders Union Local 148 in strong opposition.
Javi Rodriguez with ACLU California Action and vehement opposition.
Tatiana Lewis with the Ella Baker Center for Human Rights in opposition. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other members of the public wishing to express opposition to SB 311? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the committee for discussion, and we'll start with Senator Wiener.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I want to thank all the witnesses on both sides. I mean, the one thing I will say, I do believe that there are a lot of people who just want people to be safe in prison. And I think we all want that, and I want to just acknowledge that, even though there is a severe divide on this issue, and I'm about to explain why I'll be voting no on this bill. I do just want to acknowledge that there are a lot of people doing really strong work to support people who are incarcerated, people who are, very separate from this issue, just treated like garbage, and who are subjected to violence on a regular basis, sexual and otherwise. It is so important for everyone in prison to be safe, and CDCR needs to do so much more to reduce prison violence, including sexual violence, globally, in all prisons. This issue is long-standing, it is broad, it is deep. I think for all of us, back to when we were children, when you learn about prisons, one of the things that you know as a kid, particularly in men's prisons, is that people were getting raped. That you know that as a kid, just societally, culturally, and that is an absolute indictment on the prison systems throughout this country, that children know that about our prisons, that folks who are incarcerated are getting raped. So I want to talk about some facts about sexual violence in prison. In the last year that we have data, 2023, about sexual violence in CDCR, according to that data, 68% of sexual violence reports related to sexual violence by prison staff, 68%. Yet despite that clear evidence, what does this bill focus on? Trans people. Not staff, trans people. Why? Because we are in the midst of a national poll-tested culture war targeting trans people.
Okay, I'm sorry, 1 second. Ladies and gentlemen, please do not interrupt the hearing. If you want to react, step outside. Senator has the floor. We heard your perspective. He now has the opportunity to present.
Because we're in the midst of a national poll-tested culture war targeting trans people, dehumanizing them, falsely portraying them as predators and fakers, and trying to erase their very existence. The goal, and we see this throughout the political system, is to turn trans people into terrifying predators who are trying to scam their way into women's spaces in order to prey on them. We see this with bathroom bills. We see this around now prisons. We see it in so many scenarios. It is an elaborate, orchestrated national campaign designed to justify the dehumanization and erasure of trans people. This crusade against trans people has been going on for years. In fact, some, not all, but some of the people behind this bill are in this building regularly, aggressively opposing every effort to support trans people, no matter what the subject. And they've supported broad efforts to dehumanize trans people in every respect possible, trying to deny them access to health care, trying to deny them access to public spaces. This crusade had lighter fluid poured on it in last year's election, when Donald Trump and his allies spent hundreds of millions of dollars demonizing trans people, including demonizing the provision of health care to trans people in prison. That was a specific attack. In his first 2 weeks in office, Trump then issued
Point of order. This has nothing to do with this bill.
It has everything to do with this bill, Senator,
All right.
with all due respect.
The senator has the floor.
In his first 2 weeks in office, he issued a half a dozen executive orders targeting trans people for this tiny population who were just trying to live their lives and be who they are, and who are at extreme risk of violence in all aspects of society. In fact, one of Trump's executive orders mass transferred trans women from federal women's prisons to men's prison in one fell swoop, putting them at massive risk of sexual violence. We saw situations where trans women weren't even allowed to bring their bras with them when they were transferred. That's the level of dehumanization that we've reached in this country towards trans people. Contrary to the narrative put out there by supporters of this bill, trans people are not rampant predators in prison, as the author put it, running around raping and infecting people. They are overwhelmingly victimized. 59% of trans women housed in men's prisons report sexual violence. And while trans people constitute approximately 2% of California's prison population, they constitute 23.8% of the victims of sexual violence in prison. And yet, despite this data, these crystal clear facts, that sexual violence is largely a staff issue, and that trans people are horrifically targeted for violence in prison, this bill focuses on trans people and trans people only. We passed Senate Bill 132 in 2020 to improve safety for trans people who are incarcerated. The bill resulted from a 3-year legislative process with significant stakeholder input, prison visits, significant engagement with the administration, with CDCR. SB 132 provides CDCR with significant discretion and flexibility in transfers, and CDCR has liberally used that discretion. In the nearly 5 years that SB 132 has been in effect, approximately 400 people have requested transfer under the bill. Of those 400, CDCR has transferred approximately 60, 15%, 15%. CDCR has rejected 80 people. In other words, CDCR has rejected more people than it has transferred. The suggestion that CDCR is transferring anyone who asks, or no matter what, or that it's not taking risk into account is simply false. We've extensively looked into and inquired about reports of sexual assault by SB 132 transferees. We're aware of we're not aware of a single instance in which an SB 132 transferee raped someone. We are aware of an instance of an individual who has been charged and is being prosecuted for rape, who was not transferred under SB 132, who had a pre-existing lawsuit and was transferred pursuant to a settlement of that lawsuit. I want to be clear, we need to have a zero tolerance policy for sexual violence. One prison rape is too many. It needs to be zero. And CDCR needs to do more, and I think that is one thing that all sides can agree on this bill. The author now states that she may be willing to limit the bill, and I've been told to remove the separate but equal prison facility for trans women that's in the bill now. But the bill still treats trans people differently from other women by categorically denying transfer to anyone required to register as a sex offender. This ban doesn't apply to anyone else, just to trans people, only trans women. And of course, we know that the sex offender registry contains a massive array of crimes, including, I don't know, having sex in a car or in a park. That gets you on the sex offender registry. We also know that LGBTQ people have been massively and disproportionately targeted and subjected to being slammed onto the sex offender registry. That's the whole history of the sex offender registry. So this aspect of the bill is incredibly overbroad and discriminatory. So the fact remains that CDCR has significant discretion. There are some who think they have way too much discretion, but they have a lot of discretion not to transfer people if they conclude that it creates a risk. And CDCR has used that discretion, only transferring 15% of people who've requested it. This bill is a solution in search of a problem. And tragically, that proposed fake solution, which does not deal with the actual issue of sexual violence, that proposed fake solution is part of a broad-based culture war to dehumanize trans people and eliminate them from public life. I won't be a party to that, and I'm voting no.
Okay, any other comments? Vice Chair Siakta?
Okay, there's a lot to unpack in this. Number one, the sex offender registry was not aimed at trans people. That thing started a long time ago, and one of the first people put on it was my neighbor who tried to molest me, but wound up raping a person with no arms, no legs. It was disabled, gravely disabled, in a trash bin. Okay, that person went on the sexual offender registry. So he has nothing to do with being a trans person or anything else. It's people who are unable to control themselves in that manner and create physical harm to others. I'm hearing that there's nothing going on in our women's prison now related to our transfers in our trans-identifying people being transferred over from people who aren't in prison. But I'm hearing from the people that are in prison that it's a problem. And if it's a problem, we need to do something about it. Because if it's 1, 2, 15, 20, whatever it is, the other 31%, if those were correctional officers doing that, and it was the other side, or it was the other, the stats were flipped on the other side, we'd be screaming bloody hell about what are we allowing to have happen in our prisons. This just seems to affect trans-identifying males to females going to female prisons. I don't see it going the other way. Do we have any transfers from the female prisons requesting transfer into male prisons? There's a reason for that, and they probably wouldn't even allow it. It's safety. Earlier today, we heard that it was 99% of the correctional officers. Now we hear it's 68%. So if we're talking about misinformation, maybe that information needs to get corrected before you bring it to this hearing. I had a couple of questions for our witnesses because there are actually people that understand this intimately. I believe you may have the answer to this question, or either one of you. Through the chair, may I?
Yes.
Okay. Yes, men's prisons are divided into different levels, depending on their severity of the person involved. They have Tier 4, Tier 3, Tier 2, Tier 1, correct? Do women's facilities have that same tiering, or are they, no? Are they in separate cell blocks?
No.
No. So when somebody is transferred from, say, a Tier 4, which is a really violent person, and they get transferred to the women's facility, where are they housed?
GP.
General population. So they're in a bunkhouse with
7 other women if
7
they
other
go to
women.
CCWF, and
Right.
1 other woman if they go to CIW.
Understood. You've heard that there's nothing happening in prisons. Is that true?
That's not true. We get letters, we get emails, we get phone calls nonstop from different women that different things are happening.
And what do you think should be solutions to this? Because I understand they don't want people to be in the men's prison where they are going to get assaulted. So what do we do with them? We should probably house them in a facility just like we're saying. Keep them separate.
Thank you. We're in a position here where people, I mean, if we could lend some of the care that Senator Weiner has for this population to the rest of the population, if we could extend that level of care to be inclusive of everybody, we'd be fine. We'd be fine. But this level of care is being advocated and set aside just for a very small group of people, and it's creating an incredible power imbalance. It's creating a group that is above reproach. We can't have, there's a very dangerous imbalance that's creating a situation where people who've gamed the system, who are, using a false trans identity in order to wield power over other incarcerated individuals as well as staff. It's very dangerous. It's unhealthy. These people, nobody is being afforded the opportunity to rehabilitate under these circumstances because this is so unhealthy, and it wasn't done with that intent. I know the spirit of SB 132 was for like a holistic remedy to a horrible problem, a horrible injustice that is being done to a vulnerable community, but it has accidentally created another horrible crisis that we're dealing with. Security levels are a huge issue. There is no equivalent to a men's level 4 security-wise in the women's facility. You're transferring people from a level 4 to a women's level 4, which is the equivalent of a men's level 2. So the staffing, their ability to, handle situations that arise from having people with higher security levels is dangerous. If you bring someone from a men's death row, for example, and put them directly into women's general population, this is in violation of, Title 15 regulations. There's different things that we could do to implement a way to solve this in a, manner that provides respect, agency, and dignity to all people behind the wall because it's free. Even California can afford to do this, This isn't something that is going to have a fiscal impact. This is just having a change of heart to be inclusive of the women as well as the trans women. This is
so, yeah. And on this issue, I'm not inclined to think that this is just because people don't like trans people. It's not an attack on the trans population. It's in reaction to something that is going on in our women's prisons that has been going on for a couple of 3 years. We've heard about it. Nobody's done a darn thing about it. And so now we have a senator who is trying to do something about it. And all of a sudden, after hearing we have zero tolerance for this, but this is okay, we're going to say no to another part of this issue of people being attacked in our prison system and being raped in our prison systems. So I will be supporting the bill, obviously. It's common sense. I thank you for your hard work on this. I know it is a difficult subject just because of the passion involved on all sides in this. But we have to make especially our women's prisons, a safer place for them to be. And this is not making it safer. So we need to come up with a better solution to making it safer than pretending that we have enough guards to cover every inch of the facility that they're in to ensure that people are not being attacked. And if we have people that are being impregnated and they're not being impregnated by the guards, I hope they aren't, well, obviously there's an issue there somewhere. With that, I will yield back to the chair, and I will make a motion when the appropriate time comes.
Okay, thank you very much. I think all of us on this committee take the issue of sexual assault and violence against female inmates in our state prison system very seriously. I think everyone here in this room shares that concern. And that's why just this morning, we approved Senate Bill 337 by Senator Menjivar, and Senate Bill 850 by Senator Ashby, to put in place more accountability for prison staff, correctional officers who are engaging in sexual assault, violence, sexual misconduct against inmates. And just note that the vast majority of cases, according to 2023 data, and this is consistent over the years, the vast majority of cases in which there is sexual assault is committed by staff within the CDCR system. And so that's why we were specifically focused in those bills on taking action to address the principal people that are causing harm against inmates. So I'm not going to reiterate what Senator Wiener said, but there is no doubt a culture war that's being perpetrated in this country to dehumanize and to strip away the rights of trans people in California and throughout this country. That is a fact. And respectfully, I think this bill is part of that effort. You may have good intentions, but I will not be supporting this bill today, and my recommendation is a no. Any other comments? Okay, Senator Grove, you may close.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to assure, my colleague from San Francisco and the chair that this is not a political issue to me. When I got that letter from a prison inmate, incarcerated woman, last year, and she sent me a condom and says, this is what I've been given to prevent rapes, someone raping me. And there's even instruction that comes from the staff. Carry the condom with you to the day room. Carry the condom when you go to the shower. Take the condom with you just in case. That's coming from an incarcerated woman. We looked at the budget. We did allocate resources for condoms to be purchased for a women's prison, and the instruction of these women to carry these condoms. These letters that I showed you earlier from incarcerated women describing what they are saying is happening with trans individuals is why I addressed this bill. I didn't do this unintelligently, or I didn't do this without checking with people. I met at least 2 times with my colleague from San Francisco to figure out a way to address this issue. I met with the LGBTQ community. I met with previously incarcerated individuals. I met with coalition survivors. I contacted CDCR. I had several conversations with Director McCumber. And I'm just going to get the hell beat out of me right now from the right, because when I started this, I said no biological men in women's prisons. And then I was introduced, I'm not going to use the right name or the real individual's names who's incarcerated. I'll call this person Joan. I met Joan, and talking to Joan, you or anybody on the dais or anybody in this room or any of the people that came up and talked about saying things and all that stuff would never know that Joan was a biological male. And I'm just using this terminology so we all know what we're talking about. Joan was transferred and moved from a male prison because Joan was assaulted by male prisoners, because prisons are notoriously violent places. Joan, in all appearances and personality and gestures, whatever else you want to describe, looks and appears, acts like a woman. And I know there's this big divide about what we think of women, but I'm just trying to give you the scenario. When I heard Joan's story of being trafficked and sold, going upstairs to pay rent for his mom to the landlord when he was young. She was young. And then being in the foster youth, a product of the foster youth in the system. And actually saying that when he ran away, or she ran away and went to the streets, she preferred the LGBTQ population, the gay male population, to earn a living. And the reason why is because the gay male population, I'm not trying to offend anybody, I'm trying to share where I am on this bill. The gay population just wanted to have sex with an individual. But when he went to the heterosexual population, it was more brutal because it was taking out what he thought was aggressions on something they were dealing with inside. And it was more brutal. It was extraordinarily brutal based on the information that was provided to me by this individual. There is no way, even though Joan has male anatomy on bottom, that I would ever want to transfer Joan back to a male prison. Joan deserves protections as a, again, I know I'm going to offend everybody in the world, a real transgender person. Joan deserves to serve the incarceration sentence that she has under the safe protections that these two women, if they were to go back, should serve under, or the incarcerated women that are not transgender women, but women that are incarcerated. And these letters, evident, if you sat and read through them, or you met with these women in prison in Chowchilla, if you met with them, you would know that there are individuals in there, they describe them 6 foot tall, 200 pounds, 5'9", 190 pounds, intimidates them, puts them in a circle, makes them stand there all day, and then assaults them, beats them. You know, it's intimidation. And with the good intention, I believe, from my colleague from San Francisco to protect individuals like Joan, with no guardrails, and I know he says CDCR has direction, but CDCR is making decisions, and the family sues because of what happens, and then they don't make decisions, and Equality California and other organizations sue, so it's creating a financial stress on our penitentiaries or our prisons as well. But SB 132 puts a preference for transgender transferees over women that have been sentenced to the only 2 women's prisons that we have. This is not political for me. I can't control what's going on the federal level, just like any of you can't control. But I can tell you that when I read these letters and I had those meetings, one rape, no matter what kind of rape it is, especially for somebody in an 8x8 box, is completely unacceptable when they have no place to go. These 2 ladies sitting before you meet with these women, they talk to these women, they send me these letters, and it is horrific that we will not support this issue. Working with my colleagues and the conversations that we've had, I was aware of a bill that was going to be amended to address the staff issue, and I'm glad we are addressing the staff issue. There is no doubt in my mind staff participates in the rape of incarcerated women. I'm glad that's being addressed. There is no doubt in my mind that the gynecologist, that even though they haven't been convicted yet, that the gynecologist that and I'm going to say something that's really going to offend people in just 10 seconds, should be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. And the woman, because usually as a woman, if you have a male gynecologist, there is a woman in the room with you. And my first response to that issue was, where was the woman in the room? And they said, there. There is a special place in hell for that woman, for not protecting those women from that gynecologist. So I'm doing this not because of the federal government, not some accusation that you made that it's political and that there's some tenor to erase trans people. That is not true. I'm doing this because of the letters and the meetings that I had with people they have introduced me to that are locked in an 8x8 cell that are facing this issue every single day, and CDCR says their hands are tied and can't do anything about it. And one rape, regardless if it comes from a guard, a transgender inmate, a 290 registrant in a woman's prison, a CDCR hired gynecologist, or anybody else on the list, is one too many. And this addresses this specific population. There's another bill that addresses guards. There's another bill that addresses body cameras. My bill simply is what's before you today. And I asked the committee chair about just addressing the individuals who are incarcerated, that are registered as 290 registrants, and then re-offend again. They shouldn't be allowed to transfer to a women's prison. I would think we would all be able to agree on that. I respectfully ask for an aye vote and thank the committee for its time.
We thank Senator Ciarto. Would you like to make a motion?
So moved.
Okay. So we have a motion. If the committee assistant can call the roll.
SB 311 Grove. A motion is due pass to appropriations. Adeguin?
No.
Adeguin, no. Ciarto?
Aye.
Ciarto, aye. Caballero? Gonzalez? No. Gonzalez, no. Perez? Wiener?
No.
Wiener, no.
Okay, we'll keep that bill on call. Thank you.